Good morning, everybody. How are you? I think I've got
Hey,
everybody unmuted.
good.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, we have a fun morning planned this morning. We'll wait. I think just another minute. We can just say good mornings to everybody because there's a couple of people logging on right now. We're going to make today very interactive, and our topic is how to hire an investor-friendly realtor. And we are very lucky to have Mr. Bob Wisdom here with me in person to answer questions. And again, I want to make it interactive, and we're going to share a little bit about how we work together and how I found him and why I wanted to work with him. And hopefully he has some relatively decent things to say about why he enjoys working with me, if that's the case. I'll assume
Of course.
he doesn't hate me. So thank you, Bob, for spending some time with us this morning. We are going to really, well, you know what? I'm going to throw this out there. Anytime you guys have a question, let's really make it interactive. So I want you guys to feel like you can chime in at any time. Don't have to raise your hand or anything. I'm just going to keep you guys unmuted the whole time. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background. Bob and I, gosh, how long have we been working together?
It's been a long time.
Long
Probably
time. More than
12 years, maybe?
something like that. Yeah. Yeah. A long time. More than a decade. More than most marriages last.
You're right.
So when I was looking for a realtor to work with, my criteria was I want to know who is selling the most houses. And I'd gone through quite a few people, and the overwhelming sense was that the realtors were interested in selling a house. They weren't as interested in what on the purchase side. When I was out buying a house, they weren't as interested in what was the best for me. They were interested in making a sale. And when I started working with Bob, I got a very different sense. You know, he would come out and tell me, no, I don't think this is going to be a good one. And I've worked with very few realtors who would be that honest and really have my best intentions first. So that was something that was really big for me, was that I could trust him. And I looked at his track record. He had an incredible track. What's your brag on yourself a little bit?
Well, we're probably the number one realtor in this market and stuff.
Yeah.
But it just comes down to, like you said, it's building that relationship and that trust with your whoever realtor you're going to go with and stuff. So a lot of it does come down to experience, knowing the area, knowing what works as far as a property goes, and being able to tell your client that this will work and this will not.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about that. It comes into knowing what floor plans might work.
Right.
Location is big. And price, in the end, the price, you got to be able to know when your client's going to purchase a property that you're going to be able to spin it and make money, in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you got to have that good relationship, and even your client sometimes sees things that the realtor doesn't see as well. So it's kind of give and take, relationship. So
one thing I really appreciate about working with Bob is he has his niche market, which is the Elgin and very close surrounding areas. A lot of times I'll talk to a realtor and, I'll say, well, I'm thinking about this area. And, oh, yeah, I work there. Oh, I'm thinking about this area. Oh, yeah, I work there. Well, that means that they're not really specialized in any particular area. Bob knows if we go and we're talking about a particular street or, the 200 section versus the 800 section of a street, it's a very different neighborhood. And I know Bob will know exactly what the house, you can narrow things down without having to go drive by if you're working with a realtor who knows the market that well.
Right. And as a realtor too, you shouldn't really be like Margaret sometimes will look maybe out in Rockford or something like that, or Beloit, and I'll just tell her I just don't know that area very well. So if you got a realtor that's willing to run all over the place, that's maybe not such a good idea either, you know, because if you don't know the area and you're going to go flip a property and you buy something in an area that's not so, marketable, then that's not good.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because I've made that mistake of, when Bob said, well, I don't really know Rockford, and I thought, well, I'll just go figure it out on my own instead of following my own advice and now I have a great realtor that is in the Rockford market. But I went out there and I bought some really dog houses in bad neighborhoods. They still cash flow, but I could have, with my money, I could have done something a lot smarter if my realtor, if I had been working with a realtor. It's my own fault. But if I had been working with a realtor that knew the market the way Bob knows our market, it would have been a very different experience. So yeah, that's a huge benefit.
So it that comes back to like experience, somebody that's been in the marketplace a long period of time. Maybe you will find a realtor too that maybe has been in the market for a year or two. I don't know. And if they're go-getters and they're aggressive, then it's not a problem. But you need to know the streets and locations and what sells and what doesn't. And that's really important to the success of each investor that's out there. So
for me, it was exactly what you said. I'm looking for the top realtor. How can, for these people on the call, how can they find a good realtor? Where are places they can go to look? Because for me, I just would drive around and I saw Bob and Lisa Wisdom, Bob and Lisa Wisdom. I didn't even know who he was, but I knew his name and I knew his signs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, if you get online too, the people, the realtors that are successful are spending money online. So you can, look through that, name recognition, not too much newspaper ads and stuff like that anymore, but, the internet's probably, where it's at. And maybe you talk to a few different realtors. You may go through 3 or 4 realtors, as well too, in that process of learning who's going to help you and who's not. And in the end too, like you talked about, you got to look at the big picture. It's not just on the buying end, but it's on the selling end as well too.
Right.
That realtor is going to be a direct reflection of who you are in your business, your professionalism. You're creating this little company as an investor on your own, and that realtor is going to be a representation of you. So if you get this realtor that's going to pull up and he's got wrinkled pants and
that's so true,
his hair is all pushed to the side, or whether it be a woman or whatever too, that's a reflection of you. You want somebody that's going to be an extension of you, a professional.
That's so true. We've talked about this before. Your realtor is a key part of your team, and they better reflect the image that you want reflected.
Right.
That's
and unfortunately in real estate, a lot of it is based off image and who you are and stuff like that, and how you look. I mean, people are judging you and your product, right by looking at it. It's, you know what I mean? It's,
I good, bad, or otherwise, I for sure, when I'm meeting a new property manager or realtor, that is a very real consideration, because what kind of a person are they going to attract? There's always this idea that somebody, within the first 10 seconds of meeting them, they're sizing you up, and it might happen unconsciously, but they're measuring, is this person the same level as me? Am I better than them, or are they better than me? Right. So if somebody's meeting your realtor at their potential new house for the first time, and they're thinking, I don't care for this person, I don't trust this person, I don't like the way this person looks, right. That's a reflection on how good of a price you can get for your house. Right. If somebody you want top dollar for your house, you better have a top dollar realtor working for you.
Right.
And on the flip side, one that is willing to throw out lowball offers. So it is sort of a unique combination.
Yeah. It's hard to find in today's market, that's for sure. So
is somebody who you can trust, somebody who has your best intentions. And that's something that it was incredible to me when I started in the business, and I would talk to a couple different realtors. I work almost exclusively with Bob now because it's just so much easier than anybody else. But people they were just difficult to work with. They would say, well, you can't put in that low ball of an offer. I'm like, well, how do you know? I see that houses have sold for that or less. So why would you not want to do that? And it really comes down to, they didn't want to spend their time because they didn't see the big picture of, they could, on the flip side, do a sale and, make a much better commission. I know sometimes, poor Bob, I feel like he works so hard for some of our deals that he walks away from the closing with just enough to pay for his lunch.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So,
but it's the long-term big picture.
Yeah. To expand too on that is sometimes too, even with a realtor and stuff, you might want to look at maybe even a team, concept too, because, it helps to have assistants, if that realtor has assistants and they're doing some of the legwork, the paperwork, that way it's, from a paperwork
Yeah.
standpoint,
Yeah,
it
things
can
get done
work.
fast.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you got one realtor trying to do it all, sometimes they can get bogged down
Yeah.
and you get lost in the whole shuffle and stuff too. So with us, like us, we have systems in place, and when we put offers in, everybody knows that, the step-by-step
Yeah.
process. I don't even necessarily even have to be there.
Yeah.
The assistant can do a lot of the work too. So,
Yeah.
because really it's like we're fishing, we're fishing for those best deals. We're not going to get them all.
Yeah.
It's just you're throwing all the hooks in the water and seeing what's going to stick. And there's a lot of paperwork involved from a realtor standpoint, putting in, 6, 7 offers.
Yeah.
You're talking 12-page contracts, and that's 80 pages of just paperwork right there, and then all the disclosures, and then a lot of these properties have addendums and on and on and on.
Yeah,
so it's a lot of work.
The foreclosed properties are definitely more work than just a typical house.
Right.
So let's talk about that. The process that we follow to make it simple for everybody to actually get out there and make the offers. So Bob has it set up so that I get emailed a list whenever houses come up on the market that fit my criteria. So it's automated. We get it. Any realtor can set that up, right?
Right. Any realtor can set you up on like an automated email system. You tell them the parameters of what you want. Like we talked about, some of the key factors, and then they'll set it up in a system. So that way you're not having to jump online every day and trying to start your looking all over again.
Yeah.
It will automatically notify you when something new hits the market that fits the parameters of what you're looking for.
Yeah, there's no reason to spend hours looking through Zillow or Realtor.com. Narrow it down and let them send the deals to you, and it just makes it so much easier. And I enjoy that. So sometimes I get caught up in sitting on Zillow. I'm like, oh, look at this house. And then all of a sudden 2 hours later, well, that's not the highest and best use of my time. Yeah. So the way we work it, Bob sends me these listings. And so, I'll one of two things happens. Either I will go through the listing. If I see that there's 30 new listings, there's a good chance that there's not as much competition in this round. Mm-hmm. And I only look for houses when I'm ready to buy a house, because it's a time waster. If you spend too much time out there looking, well, those houses aren't going to be available when you are ready. So if you're doing it just to get a feel for the market, that's one thing, but that's not a money-making activity. If you still need to get your funding in place, spend your time doing that. Mm-hmm. And once you have that in place, then be ready to make an offer on a house. So when I call the office, and most of the time I don't talk to Bob at the office, I just talk to his assistant, and I say, hey, I'm ready to look at houses sometime in the next 3 days. Can you pull our criteria? Mm-hmm. And we start with 3-bed, 2-bath houses that have at least 1,000 square feet within 10 miles that are under $100,000. Now, I don't pay $100,000. That's higher than what I have as my threshold, but you don't know how low somebody's going to go on a house. I mean, we're shocked sometimes when they take an offer, but we don't know exactly the position the bank is in, or the realtor. There's a lot of factors on their side that we can't assume because it's listed at a price that's the best they'll take. So what do we? I mean, a lot of times we'll go in 50%, 75% of the asking price, and Bob just laughs at me. I'll call him up after I've looked at the houses, and I'll say, okay, 8 worth $20,000. This one $10,000. This one $70,000. And I can picture him scribbling these notes, and then calls Jennifer. And
but some of them work, and that's the whole thing. If you can get those 1 or 2 that work at that cheap price, I mean, it's like, you're right. I'm pretty amazed at some of them that they actually accept them, and those have turned into really good money makers. As well. So I mean, like we kind of were talking about earlier, a lot of it's, there's 3 things in real estate. That's the condition, the location, and the price. 2 of the 3 we can control. We can control the condition by making adjustments. Location we can't, so that's very key, obviously. And then the price, we can set price and can control price as well. So
that's the fun part of the game, is the little bit of a gamble, and you see what comes back, and you throw it up and you see what sticks.
Right, exactly. So, and you got to make the numbers work. But I mean, early on, you got to know whether how much you think you're going to put into it, And as you all grow with your experience in investing, you're going to know when you walk in a house, hey, this is going to be $10,000 or $15,000.
Yeah.
It's hard, it is kind of hard when you first get started because you want to overanalyze everything and take a week to figure out all these numbers, and really you don't have that kind of time. I mean,
Yeah, it'll be gone. Somebody else will have it under contract at that time.
You will have enough time to do due diligence, once you're accepted.
Did we break up for a minute there? I look like we lost a connection for just a minute. Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, Bob just said, doing the due diligence when you get started. So that's something that we help you guys with too. We have the checklists of these are the big items that you need to account for, and this is the budget that you allow based on square foot of the house. So that's something that obviously in the first couple deals you guys do, we'll work more closely with you. But he's right. You get to a point where you can walk into the house and, what do we spend 2 minutes sometimes in a house, in a house that we buy? We don't need to be there for a half hour. We're going to look at the big things like, does the HVAC seem to be working? Does it need a new roof? I'll open up some of the bathrooms and the kitchens. Are there pipes in the walls, or do I need to replace all the copper pipes? How is the electric? I look at the electric panel. If there's knob and tube, I know I need to replace the entire electrical system, and that's probably going to be $5,000 to $7,000 depending on the size of the house. So the big ticket items, we decide, hey, these big ticket items, there's too many of them. Or actually, it's not even, there's never too many of them. It just determines what price we're going to offer.
Right.
So we'll go into a house, and if they're asking $70,000, I don't care. I pay very little attention to what their asking price is. I go in and I see what comps are. So I look at what's sold in the neighborhood, within a mile or less, and how can I get my house up to that price, allowing for my profit and the repairs. Now I look at what could I pay for this house? And sometimes it is a $70,000 house. I would have to pay $20,000, but I'll throw that offer out there. I think we lost the audio for a second. All right, we're back. I saw that we went off for a second. I'm gonna let Bob talk for just a minute. I'm gonna go kick my kids off the internet. He can talk about whatever he wants to.
Okay. So, the biggest thing is, when you're out there looking for properties and I want to reiterate, I guess, is that you really have to go into it having everything, all your ducks in a row. You've got your financing in place. You don't need to spend hours, over analyzing each and every house, because like Margaret said, before you know it, it's gone. So you go in there, you spend 15 to 20 minutes, you see what needs to be done. You don't have to necessarily go back and try to shop and figure out each and every item, how much it's going to cost. You have to just put an estimate on it and fudge some of the numbers and pad it a little bit so you're conservative. And then, kind of go from there basically. And then you got to start putting offers in. And then when you get it, or if it's accepted, then you can really take a hard look at things to see if this is a house that you want to have. Just because the bank or that house, the owner has verbally accepted it, doesn't mean you're tied into it. It's when you have signed on the dotted line, that's a different story, and they've signed off on it, yes. But up until that point in time, you really could bail out of it. And really, there's in most properties that you buy, there's an inspection period where you're allowed to inspect the property. It might be anywhere from 5 to 10 days. And you could really bail out at that point as well, too. You could just say there's just too much work here and I'm canceling our contract. Right. So although you're buying a property as is condition, that doesn't mean that you still have the right where you could bail out of the contract.
Yeah, they're not going to look at your list after inspection and fix anything. But it is a short period of time, and the attorney review period, right, to be able to get out of it.
So there's a lot of loopholes where if all of a sudden you get cold feet and like, oh my God, this place is covered in mold up in the attic and I didn't realize it, you can bail out, So
Yeah, it's most important that you get a counter offer and an accepted offer. So people freak out and they don't make the offer. Don't freak out until you have an accepted offer.
Right.
You've got to be putting the offers out there. So
because there's a lot of people that are investing right now.
Yeah.
So almost every house, it seems like we get many times we get into multiple offers.
Yeah, that's the worst. I hate getting the multiple offers, which is why I like getting the offer in first. So talk a little bit about, I know when Jennifer will send me the list, there's often, or always, I would say right now, there's always houses that I see on my list that don't come through because you guys further filter it by this one has what is it? The first look, option.
Yeah. And this is a thing that a lot of investors, first-time investors, don't realize is that a lot of banks have what they call like a seasoning period. So the property has to be on the market for, say, 2 weeks, and then what they're trying to do is just trying to build up, multiple offer situations. Also, some of these government properties, they want to open up properties to only first-time home buyers.
Right.
So there's sometimes 3 to 4 weeks where investors can't bid on them, and that's a lot of the properties as well too. So it can be very frustrating from an investor standpoint going in. You're looking at these properties, and then you tell your realtor, all right, I'm ready to put an offer in, and then you find out you can't because it's not open to investors yet.
And you don't want to waste your time even looking at it.
Right.
It might be the best deal in the world, but don't waste your time with it. Don't even think about those properties until you actually have the ability to make the offer on it.
Right. And it might be as high as like 6 out of 10 properties now, maybe 7 out of 10 properties that you cannot bid on in the first 2-3 weeks. So it gets very frustrating because those come across your computer and like, oh my God, this is only 30,000. And then you want to bid on it and you can't. So
right. That's why I talk sometimes to people who are actually first-time home buyers and also interested in flipping houses. And I tell them, you're in the perfect scenario right now. If you're willing to actually, suck it up and live in a house that you're fixing up, you get in there. And especially if you're buying with cash and $30,000, it's not very hard to buy it with cash. You come in as owner occupied, you're going to get it.
Yeah, you're first in line, basically.
You're first in line. But oftentimes, so let's talk about what the bank considers, and this is a little bit of speculation, but what we've found and how we've been able to get so many deals is we come in with a cash offer and a very quick close.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure that, and you can speak from a realtor's perspective, I'm sure that they're not always taking the highest offer. They're taking the one that's most likely to close. They want to know that you've got a track record of actually closing deals. They're obviously taking one, they're considering the price. But if the deal falls through, that's not going to look good on the realtor. That's not going to look good for the bank. So that's
cash is king basically in this market. So if you got cash, that helps a lot. And there's, pretty much otherwise if you go with a conventional loan, then you have to have maybe a little bit bigger down payment. That certainly helps as well too.
Yeah, and even earnest money. A lot of times we'll put down more earnest money. So again, they see that we're serious, and I think that helps. I think that helps our position when we're coming in like that.
Right.
Especially if it's a low ball offer.
Right.
On a house. So let's talk about getting the funding. So a lot of times people will go out there and want to make an offer on a house, but and everybody on the call knows that you need to have your entity set up if you're going to do it in a corporation. The whole legal side, we've already had that conversation, but you should be purchasing a house in a corporation, not in your own name. And then the proof of funds.
Right.
So I know that with making a lot of these offers for these foreclosed houses, they all happen electronically, and you have to submit the proof of funds. They won't even consider it unless it's accompanied by a proof of funds letter.
Right. Yeah, they want something on letterhead, from the bank saying you have the money in there, basically.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so that's something before you go out and start looking at houses, make sure you've got your entity set up. And again, I've shared with you guys before, I didn't do that for the first few houses. I just bought it in my name. So if you get to the point where you're not making an offer because you don't have the entity set up, I'm of the opinion, go make the offer, because that's that's how we make money, is by making offers and getting offers accepted.
Yeah, I think too. Some of them they want even your corporation, your
Yeah.
I don't know what they call it, the docs or something.
Yeah, the
how it was set up or whatever. They get that detailed. Where
the articles of incorporation.
Yes,
they'll want to see that and tie the bank to the person to make sure that there's nothing squirrely going on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are all considerations. Do you guys have any questions? You guys are so quiet. I know some of you guys are actually at work, so that's certainly understandable. Won't be for long. Those of you who are working who don't want to be working anymore.
Right.
But so we've talked about making the offer on the house. Then when we go to closing, anything we can share about closing?
Not really. I mean, just having having the funds. I mean, one thing that you do too is when she purchases a property, that the whole key is if you are going to flip it, there's a difference between renting and flipping. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to flip it, you want to have all your ducks in a row. So when you close, you got all your tradesmen ready to go.
Yep.
So
yep.
One nice thing about when we're working together, she buys a property, we're already going into the house in advance of closing and figuring out what needs to be done to the property. So as soon as we close, I mean, literally that day,
the dumpster gets delivered.
We're pulling the whole house apart and looks completely different the next day because, I mean, let's face it, time is money.
Yeah.
And if you're flipping it, we got to spin it as quickly as possible. So. Yeah. And so you have all your tradesmen lined up and ready to go, and you bang it out those first couple of weeks because it drags on and very well could be drag on for 2 to 3 months because you're trying to get bids and all that stuff. You want to get that done in advance. Otherwise, you're just losing time and money, and depending on the season, that could be a huge ordeal.
Absolutely.
If you're all of a sudden in September and it's taking you 2 to 3 months, now you're into January.
Yeah, you don't want to be selling in the midst of winter. Another thing along those lines, when we purchase a home, there is more often than not code violations because it's been sitting empty. Maybe it's a vacant building ordinance is something in the city of Elgin that they started a couple years ago. Really, it's for them to make money, but it's something that the owner of the property has to pay like $750, and the building folks, the vacant building folks, go out there and they write down a list of everything that's in violation of any code. And they are very liberal with their violations. Mm-hmm. So you should get that. Usually we get that at or before closing. We usually get it when they sign the contract for that. But that's something that you can do ahead of time. You don't want to show up at your closing and then go to the house to start doing repairs and fix it all up and not know that there's a list of violations. So there's something called a FOIA. It's a Freedom of Information Act. Anybody can get it on any property. You just fill it out online and you can search for your city. City of Elgin has one, and you just download their application, or you can even do it online now. And you can get a list of any code violations. In the beginning, when I started with my investing, I would always order the FOIA on it, because I wasn't as clear when I would walk into a house. I didn't always know what might be a code violation. And sometimes it's funny things.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's major and it's just glaring obvious. And sometimes it's just something silly like peeling paint in the back corner of the basement that nobody would know unless they had a flashlight and were 3 feet tall to crawl underneath there. So you want to take care of all of that. And you can't sell the house until you clear those up, because you're not going to get your stamps from the city. So that's something that I like to be very proactive. And going into the house, I like to see the list, in the process after we make the offer and it gets accepted, but certainly have a plan for all of that before we actually get to closing so that we can handle those violations and get them cleared up, because you need the person from the city is going to come out and say, yes, they actually did all of these.
And that varies, city to city.
Yeah.
Different cities have different rules and stuff. So some are more relaxed than others.
Yeah.
So.
And if we talk about the rental side of things, there's a big difference with a city that has strict rental licensing procedures and rules. Elgin versus South Elgin, for example, in our particular area, South Elgin is very easy to have a rental property in. Elgin is too, relatively, but you have to take a class and just all of these little details to know. When Bob's talking about the location, it's of course the location of the house. It's also the demographic of the city, and knowing who in the city you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a big deal.
One thing about the rentals too, you got to be careful. If you were to buy a townhouse or condo, you be very careful on that, because a lot of complexes they don't allow rentals.
Yeah. Or they allow a certain percent. So
Right.
just because a complex, somebody who has a rental there, they more often than not, they have a certain percent cap, or they have grandfathered people in.
Yeah.
And so they might say, we'll only allow 10% rentals. Well, if it's already at 10%, you buy a house or a condo thinking you can rent it, and you're in trouble for that. So
there's been a lot of people have gotten burned with that.
Yeah. And again, your realtor, if you're working with a realtor who's done the homework for you and even knows to look at that, you want somebody who's, again, looking at your best interests, not just looking at making a sale.
Right.
Good stuff. Good stuff. What else? What else do we need to tell them?
And
we've been doing it so long that we've got to kind of put we talk in the martial arts world, put our white belt eyes on,
right,
and think of things if we're going out there for the first time.
I think, once you get your first property, your second property, you get your systems in place, and things will just kind of, from there, it just snowballs into, a really good thing and stuff. So it's just a matter of getting that first one under your belt, and second one, and then you even start knowing, what you're going to put into the property, like, the colors, the carpet colors,
everything the same,
the same appliances, and you go with what works, the same thing over and over, and that it's really worked out to be, really well. So.
We always say, turn and burn, turn and burn.
Yeah.
Bob texted me yesterday, and we had an offer on a house, and it's always really cool to sell a house in less than 2 weeks. That's sort of our threshold, is we'd like to have a house sold in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And you know what, to be honest, most of the stuff that we're doing, it's selling in a couple of weeks. But it's all about, the presentation of the property, getting it done, the staging. I don't know if you've got it, that's maybe down the line, but staging the property and then eventually marketing the property, getting it out there. So
you work with a lot of different investors and home buyers. What do you think are some of the top differences with investors that are making good money, that are in there getting the good houses? And because some people, they get into investing and they're not doing a few things right, that makes it a very bad experience. And staging is a huge one of them.
Right.
So from your perspective as a realtor, what are some of the things that, when you're working, I guess it could be an investor or not, what are some things that, if only they did this, it would make our job selling their house easier?
Well, let's face it. Everybody, especially in the last couple of years, everybody wants to be an investor. So we get calls literally like every other day of people saying, no, I've got all this money and I want to invest. But when it really comes down to it, and they're not really ready to go, type of thing. So it's like, it comes back to all the basics that we were just talking about, having your money in hand, having, your proof of funds, and then going out and having that confidence in yourself that, hey, if I find this thing, we're making an offer right now.
Yeah.
And putting out multiple offers, that's the key. Because you could put out, a lot of times you're going to put out 10 offers and you're going to get maybe one.
Yeah.
Maybe one.
I remember when we first started working together, and there's always this like underlying joke that Bob would ask me, does Jeff know about this? So in the beginning, we might make 10 offers, and I literally couldn't tell Jeff, because he would freak out, because he would say, what if we get all 10 of them? And I say, we made the offer at such a price that if we got all 10 of them, we would find the money. And it always worked out that we got exactly the right one.
The bottom line is, though, even if they accepted all 10, it does not mean that you have to buy all 10.
Yeah.
You buy what you want, type of thing. Until it's signed off and you pass this inspection period, it's not really, it's yours, but
there's wiggle room.
Right. So that's, as an investor, that's what you can't be afraid of, because it's like, a lot of times you're going to freak out, like, oh my God, I got this property, and maybe it wasn't the property that you wanted, but you just say, I'm getting out of it, type of thing. So
when we go out and look at properties, I am going to buy a house. I don't go looking at properties and think, well, maybe if I find the right house, I'll buy a house. I'm going out there because I'm an investor and that's what I do is I buy houses and I fix them up and I sell them and then I buy rental properties and I rent them. So when I go out there, I will go out there and we start with our ideal criteria and then maybe we expand that a little bit until we get a house under contract. And what would you say, 2 or 3 days is all it takes us?
And it does take patience, because a lot of these banks, they punch out and they go home at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So whereas all of us, we're working 24 hours a day. So some of them might drag on a week or whatever, type of thing. You just got to be patient because as a realtor, there's really not much we can do. And a lot of it, there's no personal relationships anymore. It's all done over the computer. You submit it and then you sit and wait for a response, type of thing. So that's why it gets back to putting multiple offers out there and then just seeing what kind of comes in and from there.
Yeah, that's the fun part. I remember in the beginning too, we were making a lot of offers on short sales, which I don't even look at them anymore because you don't know when you're going to hear back. And we had a house. In hindsight, I should have been patient with it, but it was probably 6 months, and we had an accepted contract, and they weren't getting. Well, the seller had accepted it. That doesn't mean the bank approved it with a short sale. And we sat on it, and I actually forgot that we even had it until somebody called us and they were like, hey, what's going on with that deal? So, the foreclosures, even if it's a week, and actually it feels like they've been getting better with getting, maybe
depends on the bank and stuff. Certain
yeah.
banks are better than others. So,
and some of them, I guess maybe because we're making so many offers, but usually within a day or two, we've got a response from some people.
Right.
And some of the houses, I might put a really lowball offer in, but I know that it's not, I would go higher. So if I don't get a response, and a lot of times it's so low that they don't even respond.
Yeah, well, and a lot of them do respond. They just flat out reject it too.
So then we go back and we say, okay, how much more could we give? Is there enough wiggle room in the price that I offered? Can I add $10,000 and see if they respond? So, if somebody rejects the offer, I'm okay with that. That doesn't mean no. That means, we just need to keep talking. So then it's my job to, it's my turn. I go back and either say, no, I can't make the numbers work, which more often than not, that's the case. Or I say, you know what, there's some wiggle room. Let's go back and let's change the offer price 10,000 higher. And then we've gotten deals like that where they flat out rejected it. And then we came back and we've ended up getting the deal. Worst case scenario for me as an investor is when we make an offer and they accept it. Because I think I've left money on the table.
You're right.
So that doesn't happen often. If we could probably count on one hand.
Right.
But it's totally normal that we make an offer, they counter somewhat close to their price, or maybe they know their numbers and they come down quite a bit. Now, we're always pleasantly surprised when they come down $10,000 from their asking price, and sometimes more.
A lot of it's time sensitive too. If a property's been on the market for a while, then they're more likely to maybe come down more. If it's something that's newer on the market, then they may only come off, 5 or 10,000 type of thing. So
so then you can sit and wait.
You have to look at the market time of a property as well. I think is important.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's like some properties that are they're flying under the radar. They might be up at 90,000, and they've been hanging around for 5-6 months. And those are kind of good ones too, because the bank is thinking, they're at the point where they're going to really cut the price. So those ones you might be able to get good deals on too. So sometimes if there's nothing that's recently come on the market, you start going into the background and seeing what's kind of been laying around that might be up at a higher price.
It's interesting, the psychology of the listing price, because some people, again, we as investors, we're going to go in and I don't care so much about the listing price. I care about what I can pay for it. And a lot of people, they're not thinking that way. So they see a house for $90,000 and they say, nope, it's not worth it. Well, just because they have a $90,000 list price doesn't mean that somebody's going to pay $90,000 for it. And this has happened several times on houses that we've not bought as well, where we've made an offer and maybe they didn't accept the offer. And I like to go back sometimes and look at them and see what did they take. And, sometimes that $90,000 house did sell for $50,000 over time, because maybe they didn't accept my $50,000 offer. And then 2 months later, it's still on the market. They're kicking themselves. And then another $50,000 offer came in. Sometimes that $50,000 offer second round is us as well. We've had that happen.
Again, it comes down to a lot of these banks have their charts, and after 30 days they cut it to this, after 60 days they cut it to this type of thing. So you're right. It's just you got to keep an eye on that stuff. So
all the fine details of the fun of what we do.
Right.
Well, we're gonna wrap it up here pretty quick. I want to open it up. Do you guys have questions? I know for a lot of you, the next step is finding that realtor, or you're already working with somebody and going out and making these offers on these houses. So I want to open it up for you guys. Any questions that you have? I know, Linda, you might have some questions as well with yourself working, what ideas you've got, or what steps you've got going on next. You're unmuted on my side, so you guys know.
Yeah, this is Linda. Well, I mentioned to you, I think yesterday, we're still working on our LLC, but you had mentioned that even if, did I hear you right? And you were cutting in and out a lot during this webinar, so I'm not sure if I heard everything correctly. But did you say that even if you don't have your LLC set up yet, if you want, if you really see a house that you think is a good deal, to go ahead with it?
It's not the worst thing in the world. I know, because I've done it on at least a dozen houses, to buy a house in my own name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's, and even if you do, we've had different circumstances. Sometimes I'll buy a house in my own name. Sometimes it's because I messed up on the paperwork and put my own name instead of putting the LLC's name. But also sometimes it's happened that we bought a house in one entity as a flip property, and then we decided to keep it as a rental, and we switched the entity.
Yeah.
So it's, there's, again, don't let not having the LLC set up be the reason why you're not making the offer. I mean,
yeah, I think as you grow, the LLC thing will be probably more important, but maybe if it is your first or one or two or three, it's probably not going to be as big of a deal, but as you get going, it's probably going to be more important from probably a accounting purposes.
And it's not going to take you guys too long to get that set up. So even if you make the offer and you already know what the LLC name is going to be, like Bob said, sometimes they'll ask you for the articles of incorporation, but that at least buys you for sure enough time to make the offer, throw an offer in there.
Yeah.
And then whether you do it in your own name or you put it in the name of the LLC, knowing that you're in the process of creating it.
Just to get the experience of the process too, going, so you can.
It's funny, when we started out, it was always about one house. Like, hey, I found this awesome deal, and then my heart would be broken if I didn't get it.
Right.
So we kind of had to get over that and just know that, hey, I am going to go find a house. But this, for you, Linda, this is a great one to start with and to practice with. The reality is, when you've got a killer deal like that out there, you're probably not going to get it. But it's okay, because you're still going to go through the process. Still write up an offer on it.
Yeah.
Still go out and check it out. And
like you said, you can't get too attached to each house.
It's getting it or not getting it.
Right. It's a business and it's all numbers. So
yeah. I mean, that being said, I do think just preliminarily looking at that house, I think it's something that you could for sure make work. What I suspect is you're going to make an offer and they're going to tell you there's already multiple offers and they want your highest and best.
Right.
So then you've got to decide, for example, the one on Worth that we're going to go look at the 2-day, that was a house they were asking $31,000. I knew it wasn't going to go for $31,000. We have enough experience for what the market is in that area. The houses are selling for $150,000 to $180,000. And so a $31,000 house is going to get snatched up fast. What did they say? They had 20 offers on it?
20 offers.
20 offers on the house. And so again, I go in it kind of like the house you're talking about, Linda. And I say, well, I have no expectation, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in my highest and best as my offer. And if they take it, they take it. If they don't, they don't.
Right.
So we put in, what was it, 47,777?
Yeah.
Which, that's a lot higher than their asking price, but it also is lower than what I know I can make a lot of money. So,
I think on that one too, there were 2 offers that were higher, but it came down to I don't think they had their act together, those 2 buyers. They didn't have all their ducks in a row. So they just kept working their way down the list, and we were third on the list, and voila, you got this house that, was cheap.
Dirt cheap. It's such a good, I can't wait to take you guys there and see it. So it's, it's that just put it out there and then let the process play out. It'd be awesome if you put an offer on it and you got that house. How fun would that be?
Mm-hmm.
I obviously you're not going to be owner occupied, so you could get bumped out there. But there's this. It's a great one to start with.
Are you talking about the one on Liberty, or are you talking? Which house are you talking about?
It's connecting to audio.
Margaret? She was talking
Okay, you guys there? Sorry,
Margaret, I think.
Yeah, I can see now when the audio starts trying to reconnect, so I stopped talking. I'm talking about your house on Liberty that you sent me. I'm also talking about Worth.
Yeah.
They're the same scenario. The one on Liberty is not going to sell for as much. It might sell for 100,000, but
yeah, I looked at the comps and they are selling for around 100,000 within a couple of blocks area.
Yeah. So, when you go there, if it's, I didn't actually look at it on the map, but if it's on the corner and if it's across from a gas station, that's a very different, Bob talked about location. That makes a big difference. We just bought a house on Liberty, but it's in a very residential side and it's an old Victorian, surrounded by old Victorians.
It's right by 20 in Liberty.
Okay. Yeah, it's, just go there, and if it was me, I would just throw an offer out there. I might throw an offer without even seeing the place. I'm inclined to do things like that. Because you gotta start it. You gotta start the process and let them either reject the offer, even if you just put it in at $20,000. Then you're gonna get a sense, at least a starting point sense of where they're coming from. If they reject it, then cool. That you just at least got to enter your first offer on a foreclosed property, or not. Not for you, your first, but as an investor, they get to start their first deal. And maybe they get a response that says, hey, I'm countering it at this. Now a much better place of where they're going to go. If they counter at the asking price, that's a great thing, because now it's not a highest and best situation. Now you can go look at the house. Now you can go make sure that it's, that there's not too many crazy things. There's no dead bodies in the closets. So that would be what I would do. I love that you're looking, you've got all these pokers out there. So that's awesome. Any other questions from you guys before we wrap it up? Going once? Going twice? All right.
Hello?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear us? Or, yeah. I couldn't hear you
now.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to comment on some things that both you and Bob said about finding the right realtor. As you know, I'm a relatively new realtor, and so I don't have that track record. I don't have that experience that Bob has, but I do think that it's important for people to also take a look at, considering newer realtors like myself, because I am like for the Elgin area. I've lived here for 40 years. I know both the east side and the west side because I've lived on both sides. And as a newer realtor, I don't have that much business right now, and so I am hungry. I'm eager. I have the time to invest with other investors, and I think that would be a good option too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've been in the market that long, and I mean, you know what areas work and what don't, and like you said, since you're newer and stuff, I mean, you're aggressive. You want to do the best that you can do for your clients and stuff, and help build your name and stuff like that. So certainly, it's a good option for people for sure.
I especially like what we talked about earlier with having a niche. If your niche is this particular area, because you do know it, you know it better than 90% of the people in Elgin. And if you also have a niche of working with investors, now you're narrowed down and you're not working with everybody. You're not working in every demographic even in this particular region. Then that's very desirable. If for me as an investor, if I meet a realtor and they can talk the talk and walk the walk, right. I don't care how long they've been in business. If they're, all the things that Bob talked about, if they're putting the time in. Yeah, that's just one of the factors.
Right.
But for sure, I would be very I could this is why we
Did you lose the whole connection?
yeah.
Does this mean I can go now? Should I be like the kid whisperer?
Hey, we're back. Sorry. If you guys were on the webinar yesterday, I actually used my phone to call in, and I think I need to do that on everyone because trying to do my screening over my computer seems not to be the most perfect way to do it. Learning that technology. But yeah, absolutely, Linda. I was just gonna say that somebody like you, as an investor, that's much more desirable to know that I'm working with a realtor that is specifically working with investors. Just like in the Hispanic community, they're going to work with people that understand the Hispanic community. They're not going to show houses that aren't going to be desirable to those people. They're not going to list houses that way. So when you have that niche, whatever that niche is, and to me, working with an investor, that's perfect because they've actually got the money. You're going to get the deals because they're buying with cash. You know that they're going to be selling as many houses as they're buying. So I 100% am behind saying that you're an awesome realtor and an awesome person because I know you're totally driven.
Thank you.
And I love you.
I love you too.
All right, guys, thanks so much for spending some time with us this morning. If you have any follow-up questions, just email me, let me know, and we'll get those answered. We're going to actually, for the next week and maybe 2 weeks, we're going to talk more about finding those deals. So I thought I could finish all of the finding a realtor and finding the deals in a week, but it's clearly there's too much for me to want to share with you guys. So we're going to talk again along these lines of finding the deal and go into more detail of exactly what you guys are going to be looking for. So we have that to look forward to for next week. So have a fantastic weekend, everybody, and we will talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Take care.